Reprise du débat.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for LaSalle-Émard. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to share my time with the member for Vancouver East. Mr. Speaker, I have the pleasure of announcing that in 2012, LaSalle is celebrating its 100th birthday. This is an occasion to emphasize the effort, determination, and business acumen of the seniors and retirees and those who have already passed away, but who built this city in the southwest of the island of Montreal. It's the opportunity to salute these people who worked, raised children, and gave their names to streets and neighborhoods and made prosperous businesses in these neighborhoods. We can't let the 100th anniversary of LaSalle go by without honoring these people. But the debt that I talk about that we have towards these seniors and retirees is true for LaSalle-Émard, as well as for the city of Ville-Émard, as well as for all of Montreal and Canada. This is in recognition of the debt that we have towards preceding generations and the moral obligation we have to defend the choices they've made for their golden age. The right to a comfortable retirement and a peaceful one is a cornerstone of the contract that ties youth to previous generations. This is the contract I want to defend today by opposing Bill C-25 on pooled registered pension plans and the abandonment of these seniors by our government, whereas they really contributed so much to building our society. PRPPs would create retirement plans for workers who are self-employed or who are working for businesses under federal jurisdiction that don't already have a retirement plan or pension plan for their employees. I respect the hard time that some businesses have. They want to save some costs with this. However, this plan does very little to deal with the crisis that our Canadian retirement system is undergoing. Similar plans that were set up in Australia for 10 years only resulted in very disappointing results. Canada's pension plans rely on stable investments, whereas the market has dropped by more than 10%. An expert group on pensions wrote to the Minister of Finance and to his provincial counterparts to ask him to extend the Canada pension plan as the NDP has proposed. Clearly, the government's solution is not the right one. And yet, this is a real crisis. We are experiencing, or we are living for longer and longer, and that means that the savings that we have managed to put away during our careers must also last for a much longer time. But in 2007, only one Canadian out of 3 could count on the stability of a complementary retirement plan. Only 2 Canadians out of 5 have RRSPs. According to our former chief statistician, Michael Wolfson, half of the baby boomers from the middle class will experience a dramatic decrease in their standard of living once they retire. Retirees depend hugely on the OAS in order to complement their personal savings, and the government has indicated to us that this program will cost an astronomical amount by the year 2030. The crisis is real, and it requires an urgent solution. The idea that I wish to defend today is that the current crisis has not been provoked by income to the state, as the Prime Minister gave people to understand during his trip to Davos. Canada is one of the OECD countries that spends the least amount of its income on these issues.
As rich as ours, that there are seniors living in poverty is an absolute disgrace. Les vraies racines de
The true roots of this crisis are the growth in inequality within Canadian society, and that's been the case for decades. The cause of the crisis is the stagnation of families' salaries in the middle class, whereas the salaries of the wealthiest Canadians have continued to climb throughout this same time. Today we are asking families from the middle class to save more and more with salaries that are not increasing and have not for decades, and with salaries that have certainly not kept up with the cost of living. Canadian families all want to put money aside for their retirement, but how can they do so with a level of debt that is approaching 160%? Families are going into debt for the same reasons that they don't save. It's because they simply have less money. Finally, the retirement crisis is a moral crisis because the Conservatives' ideology rejects the contract that unites younger generations and ties them to the older ones. That is the real crisis. It is a moral crisis.
17,000 seniors living in my riding and 1,000 more approaching the age of retirement. According to Statistics Canada, more than 14% of senior women on their own are living in poverty, according to the standard measure. The sensible NDP proposal to increase the guaranteed income supplement is enough to eliminate poverty among seniors. The people of LaSalle-Émard demand to know, will the Prime Minister augment the age of retirement and ask Canadians in difficulty to wait still longer to get the income supplement they were promised a lifetime ago? Just Friday morning, one of my constituents wrote to my office. She accepted that I read her letter. She tells me, and I quote, "Changing the minimum age from 65 to 67 would be unwise," she says, because it would actually cost Canadians more, since the change to the old age security will actually affect the poor rather than the rich. The poor will not be able to take care of themselves properly, cost more in the health system, eat into their meager investments, get into welfare, and so on. In the real world, not politics, have you tried to find a job at age 65, age 60, age 55, age 50? Are you aware of the reality of many people's situation as they get older? Take my case. At the age of 58, I've been struggling more than 2 years trying to find permanent employment, drifting from one job to another, training to improve my chance, and now I'm stricken with cancer. If it wasn't for my 65-year-old husband to help out financially and emotionally, where would I be? End of quote. And this is what this constituent wrote to me. How's that for a dose of reality, Mr. Speaker? I thank this fellow citizen for having the courage to speak out and allowing me to share her concerns with the rest of the Canadian people. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the debate on the pension reform is hiding a much deeper one, which is an ideological debate of the Conservatives and an NDP vision looking towards a society in which youth honor the debt they have toward their parents. In Davos, the Prime Minister shared his vision of Canada with us that he sees for future generations. Canadians will have to tighten their belts and continue to make sacrifices. That is a vision, the Conservative vision of a competitive but anorexic Canada, a vision of a population that has been impoverished by salaries and that is stagnating under debt, and a vision of a society where people are left on their own, where the old and the sick are a burden on the state, a vision of what wealth can be created by taking away from those who are already poor. This is a country that will abandon its people. The Conservative vision is what we have already heard. On the contrary, the NDP proposes that Canada where young generations recognize what has been done for them in terms of sacrifices for education and all of the love that has been given to them. The NDP wants to help those who have fallen down in the street. Canada has been built by the preceding generations, and this is what we want to talk to our children about. Let's build a future together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now we'll move to statements by members.